All right, continuing on with our outstanding guest speaker series, today the TMCC Library Open Genealogy Lab is proud to present Jim Powell, Ancient Records Coordinator for the Alachua County Clerk of the Court in Florida. Jim is a lifelong resident of Alachua County, working with the County Clerk's Office since 1999 and has become known as the man behind the curtain. The word curtain does tie closer to the original Wizard of Magic, where there was no magic. So instead of Oz, his alter ego became the Wizard of AR. This alter ego allowed him to be part of the original African-American lives. Yes, you can find him on the IMDb for that. He was also in the History Detectives with the awesome, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Tukufu Zuberi in the episode titled The Liberia Letter. In his community, he started with family and recruited the DAR and the Alachua County Historic Commission to help photograph all of the local gravestones and have since placed most of them online. If you are ever searching on Ancestry.com and you get sent to a gravestone on a Wizard of AR webpage, that's Jim's work. He credits all of his success to his awesome volunteers for the progress that has been made. So without further ado, I would like to offer a warm virtual welcome to Jim.
Hello, everyone. Let's start out where most of us usually are, sort of in a fog. You know, even though our resources are as big as the sky, all you have to do is get beyond the haze and you can see things that might have been out of sight. Maybe I said that too quickly. That brings us to the future of the past, what we like to call ancient records and technology. We have decided that it's better to show what we have than to have people come and look at it, because documents aren't something that lasts forever. Our theme is bringing light to the darkness between the pages of our record book. And to do this, we use the technology to scan and put them online. This is what we have that is online, and you can pick it up anytime. I'm going to go to, and hopefully this is going to work. I'm going to go to our website, and you'll see this is a marriage license search. And I'm just going to put a name in here like Hague, which is an interesting story. Maybe we can talk about it sometime. But you can also do little things like put all the brides first, married a Hague. Now we'll show you the brides that married Hagues, and you have the Hagues listed there. Not only is this an index, if you click on this little link right here, you will see the actual marriage license. Which not very many counties have their marriage licenses online as far back as we do. This is a fairly early one. Let's go back to the this is where you can see actually the book cover, and you can choose any page within the book. And the reason we have a drop down rather than a box where you can type in a page is these early people didn't know much about numbers at times. And they'd skip numbers, they'd add numbers, they put A's on numbers, and we had to keep them in a row. So this is why they're in a drop down and not where you can type it in yourself. You can see. Close this out. We'll go to here. With this one, you can see our list. We have 48 marriage books between 1837 there it goes, all the way back. You can see we go to 1973. I was married in 1974, so I'm not in here. But any of these books, all the way back to the earliest one, which is, it starts on page 7 for some reason. We have never figured that quite out. And it is hard to read, but it is indexed. You kind of see what they did back then. We have some really nice books. I guess it's the distance. My mouse is wanting to give me some. Marriage license A. He's going to open marriage license A. There we go. You can see these awesome pages. It says things like, oh, take her, but be faithful still, and may the bridal vow be sacred, held in after years and warmly breathed as now. But you can see the whole page. You can actually take that page and download it. This is still playing. Jumping onto other screen. There we go. Deed records. We have deed records from 1833 to 1957 that have been indexed. We have others that says OR there, that's official records. They have everything in one book. Ours is in single books, in other words, deed book, marriage book, will book, etc., as ancient records, but official records was changed in different years for different things. 73, you can see with the marriages was marriages. 57 was deeds. Mortgage records, that's not 32. It was after that, but 32 is all I've got online. Any of these will lead you to the same sort of thing as you saw with the other. There are 71 mortgage records online. Stay back. We have 375 deed records online. We have just over 500,000 documents. We have 504,000 some odd documents online. Going back and forth between the web page might not have been the best idea. It was working great to begin with. Okay, we have county commissioner minutes. Our county commissioner minutes are totally online and searchable from 1846, which was our earliest existing until present. From 1992, they're on the actual commissioner's site, but from 1846 to 1992, I have done them. Volunteers actually did the first set of them that were handwritten, and I did the set that was typed with OCR and hid the OCR, but they're totally searchable. Will books are allowed to be online because they're officially recorded. We have quite a few of those from 1840 to 1974. Judgment books are allowed to be online. We only have from 1850 to 1901. We want to do more of those, but we haven't yet. And we will. Some of the stuff that we have, we can share some of this, like the will books that we've talked about with probate. Probate files, wills, executions, administrations of estates, guardianship files, anything that's a file, that's a separate sheet of paper and a file, is not allowed to be put online by a clerk of the court. Anybody else, if you come and pay for it, you can do anything in the world you want to do with it. But we cannot put it online. You can request it. It is a public record. You can request it. So we do have most of it indexed so you can see if there's something there you're interested in and request it. It does cost $1 a page, and that's state law. We can't do anything about it. The original clerk I worked for tried to make it a dime, and that didn't work. We also have delayed birth certificates, if anybody knows what that is. People who didn't have birth certificates wanted to sign up for Social Security. They had to prove their birth, and it's more or less an affidavit. Soldiers and sailors discharges, we can't put those online. Although I went through one the other day that had a fellow who was in the raid on Tokyo, Doolittle's raid on Tokyo. And you just think, why can't we share stuff like that? But you can search it all here. And what you'll find is that some of it's online, some of it's not. Choose Geiger, that's a local name. And you can see anything that's highlighted here, you can actually see an image. That document with that name. If it's not highlighted, you have to take this number, and as part of the civil index and the name, and either email or snail mail us, and we'll do our best to get it to you. We can either copy it or PDF it. They're really easy to work with. We know just about exactly what we have and how to work with it. Except for this mouse. Good. Any questions about that? Now we go to, this is our transcription search. We had, as of May 18th, 39,697 images totally transcribed, every word searchable. That's out of that 504,281 images. Some of those images are indexes, some are plats, and some of them are like those marriage documents that do not transcribe well. So there's a set that we're not going to transcribe. Let's go do the search. Just play it. You can look for things, wagon. Seems slow, doesn't it? But our server's not. But you should be able to go to this page. It should be transcribed. You can see that this is the handwriting that a volunteer transcribed. Go to the transcription, and you can see that they transcribed it. The word wagon should be in there. This was transcribed. I say this is one way to get your name in the county court records in a good way. It was transcribed by Charlotte Villanes, the 10th of December, 2016. The future of the past, ancient records and technology. It's sort of how we became who we are. And, you know, history is sort of a transient thing. We've also done work with gravestones. And you can see this one, even history that was written in stone isn't forever. This stone is gone. There's nothing left there that you can read. And we kind of said, you know, what about paper records? They're not as durable as that stone record. What can happen to those? And the paper records and the books are sort of bound together and they don't really end up with as much abuse over time as files. This is some of our files, and you can kind of see the abuse around the edges, the way they were folded. And that does not, you know, transfer into them being long-term. So we went to digital. And I'd say the adventure begins. And that was when I got into this. And it was one day in 1999, I visited our local clerk's office. I'm a 5th generation Alachua County. And I was looking for all kinds of documents. And in answer to a question I asked about an old marriage license, they set me down at this computer. And I said, well, this stuff doesn't go back to the 1880s. Sort of gave me a little dirty look and said, oh, you have to come over here to the microfilm. So I went over to the microfilm. You don't have to do that anymore. This is my great-great-grandfather, the one who they took his pension away, that someone's talked about earlier, Alfred Hodge and Sybil Fowler. And you can see it online. And if you click on it, it will take you to the actual page online that you can see. And if we can get back out of this. I also looked around and found this book. It's called the Ancient Records Book. At the time, deed records and mortgage records were very important. This was before title insurance. Title insurance sort of changed the way things were done. People didn't have to come in and do as much research on property through the deeds as they did at that time. So I looked at this book and there was no index to it, no way to find out what was in it. And so I went home and I wrote the clerk, found an email address and wrote the clerk and asked him about it. And I said, your stuff costs $1 a page and I can't afford that, but I'd like to transcribe your book. And he says, let's see what I can do. And he sent me 25 pages. So my wife and I, who is really good at this stuff, she is, and she helped transcribe the first 25 pages and we sent them back to him. And he sent us another 100 pages. And we did those and sent them back to him. And he emailed and asked for a meeting. So I went to meet him. And he asked for, or he was looking at the book and he looked at the pages I'd done. And it was on a man named Gabriel Priest who had an Armed Occupation Act grant. And if you don't know what that is, that's called an AOA grant that they got. And you had to be so far from civilization between the Indians and civilization. And they hoped the Indians would get you first and leave civilization alone. And they promised you that they would pay you back, but they did not think you would survive to pay you back. Well, Gabriel Priest has affidavits in here from neighbors that came running when they heard the ruckus, and he was happening to come home himself and saw what was going on. And he wanted the United States government to pay him what they said they would. So there are these affidavits in this book. And he could read this and he could see that part of our history was right there in front of him, but it had been locked between the pages of this book for so long, people just walked by it, never knew the history. And right then and there, he offered me a job. And I'm thinking, fun? This is fun to do. If I go to work for the man, it's going to be work. And do I want it to be work? I went home and talked to my wife, and she said, you know, why don't you do it? And it was a $4 cut per hour in pay from construction that I've been doing for nearly 25 years, from 1999 to back to when I was 16 years old. And we decided to try it. And I was there working, and a gentleman come in. His name was Russell Henderson. And he was looking for a marriage record, which we've already shown that they're now online. And we looked through books, and I told him about my idea of putting them online. And he said, well, what would it take? Well, there were no scanners in the office. And I said, it would take a scanner and a better PC to run it than I have on that desk. In about 2 weeks, he comes along with an Acer PC, top of the line at the time, and a scanner. So we started trying to figure out how we could do this. It was a letter scanner, and we have ledger books. So I spent many a Saturday working on the ledger books and our copy machine, copying ledger-sized pages to letter-sized pages. And then I would take those and put them in the scanner and scan them. At first, we started our index for this, which is what you can see and what we've looked at before, by sending index pages to volunteers, and they'd send them back in comma delimited form, and I'd stick them in the database. Well, at a certain point, stuff started disappearing from the end of the database. The database at the time would not hold everything that we wanted to put in it. So we had to switch to a new database, Access, and it would hold everything. And now we have a great big giant online database that holds everything. But if it hadn't been for him, stuff might not have gotten started. We decided we needed a book scanner, and we went looking. And we found we could touch one for $50,000. It says 5 there, but it was $50,000. And sometimes you just have to work with what you have. So I went to the back, found a piece of shelving, and bought a couple cheap fluorescent lights and an off-the-counter digital camera. And I created a book cradle, and we bought a piece of glass to hold the page flat. And we have a lot of books that are online that were taken with this scanner right here, made out of shelving and fluorescent lights, fairly cheap digital camera. And it worked. You just got to do it. We ended up spending quite a bit of money on this scanner and some that have preceded it for paper that is loose. A lot of our books have been taken apart by the LDS to microfilm them. And microfilm isn't the greatest. You can get a much better image by scanning it. This is where I start my stories. This story is about a gentleman named Joseph Valentine. And this was one of the first books that I actually transcribed. And when I came to this, it liked to knock my socks off. It says, then came a free man of color, aged about 22 years, by Andrew Robb, judge of probate for said county, who declares that he desires to sell himself to Philip Dell as a slave. This was in 1862. And the court's going to examine him to see whether the act is done of his own free will or not. The judge of the probate for said county was Andrew Robb, and whereupon the court ordered that the said Joseph Valentine be brought before it and appointed E.M. Graham, solicitor, to represent said Negro and the said Joseph Valentine Negro as aforesaid, having been brought, it's over and over sort of the same thing, but been brought before the court and examined as whether the act of selling himself to Philip Dell was voluntary or not. He declared that it was. And in the end, down there at the bottom, it says that he disallows the 14 days that he had to change his mind. We couldn't decide why he may have done this. It may be that it was hard for him to find a job, and the Dells were kind of special people, and they probably hired him out and let him keep whatever he made. But you can't just, see something like that without searching what you have around it. And this is the same book, and you find Joseph Valentine's on the wrong side of the law here. He's carrying arms secretly. He pleads guilty, and he's fined $5 in cost of the court. This we found is 1860 census. Joseph Valentine and his family with his mother Hester is the only free African-American or Black family in Alachua County. But we do have one, and it was Hester Valentine with her son Joseph, her son Paul, and her daughter Mary. We should have this record as a county record, but we do not. This is a deed from 1855. It's supposed to have a click here. There it is. In the middle of this, it says that this land was north of the lands owned by Thomas C. Love and Hester Valentine, a free person of color. So in 1855, she had a piece of land that she more or less owned. That's, something that most people is not heard of. That was our earliest county commissioner's minutes book that flashed by. It is totally transcribed, and you can see in this one, if the click's gonna work, that Joseph Valentine is now on the other side of the law. He's being paid by the county as a constable. The constable was something that was acquired at the time it was needed. There was a dead body, and they needed somebody to stand over it until enough people could be called in to find the cause and whether there should be charges or anything like that. And he was paid $34.90 for his services as constable. And again, this was between the dark pages of this record book that now is out there where anyone can see it. This one, he's once again a constable. And you can also see there's a couple of other people who've passed away that there's names there, Edwin Ellis and Caesar Sullivan. You don't really know why, but if you had them in your family, you could see that their names were here, and you may be able to find something different if you look. This one really takes the cake. This is 1871. Joseph Valentine is now a county commissioner. He's not just a constable getting paid a pittance. He is a county commissioner. Now, of course, this was Reconstruction, so there were Black commissioners, and et cetera. W.K. Cessna, who it mentions here, was the clerk, and he was a former Union soldier. I think he was a captain. And all this stuff, like I say, is between the dark pages of these books that volunteers have liberated the light. When the click does not well. Too well. It's back. This is April 6th. The board is 1872. The board met at 10 o'clock a.m. pursuant to President W.K. Cessna is now the president of the board. George Washington is also a black man. Joseph Valentine, of course, we know as a black man who sold himself as a slave. W. Porter is a white man. H.S. Harmon is our only black clerk of the court ever. And no one knew that he was black until a gentleman from Florida A&M asked me about him. And he wanted to know if we had his bar certificate where they allowed him to practice law. And I went and found it for him. And he was over the moon. He was doing some work on Reconstruction government, and H.S. Harmon happened to be one of the only black clerks of court, one of the only black lawyers, one of the first black lawyers in the state of Florida, which again was hidden between the pages of the book. And this is the way they did things back then. They wrote out a list of 300 people, 300 men who were property holders, who were could be a juror. And they had to choose their jurors from this list of 300. And you can see that Joseph Valentine was listed as potential juror 286. So you have a black man in the list of jurors, and there's tons more of them in there. It's just that they don't tell you if you're not told. It's just that that's the way it was. A lot of places you'll find that every time they wrote a black person's name, they wrote colored or black or something. We didn't. Our county did not until 1919, 1917, 1919, during the Great War, as they called it. This, we're still following Joseph. Joseph marries Grace Wiley, 13th December, 1877. In other words, we're using these records that have been liberated from the darkness to show this man's life. It may not be every little bit and piece, but it is bits and pieces that you can put together to show what he went through. And he marries Grace Wiley in 1877 in December. This is a petition that was filed. It's one of the things I can't put online because it's part of a file. But since I kind of bought it, it is mine to do what I want to do with. This petition was filed in 1892 and indicates that Joseph died in September of 1887. So we're building this guy's life. This was also filed in 1892. It was part of the same file, and it's for the guardianship of the daughter of Joseph W. Valentine. The daughter's name is Hester, the same as his mother, probably named after his mother. The petitioners are the Wileys, and if you remember, he married Gracie Wiley. Oh, the clicks. This couldn't just stop with Joseph. This is Hester. She marries a man named Ed Lycurgus in our records. And you think, Lycurgus, that can't be that easy a name to, can't be all over like Smith and John. It's got to be easy to find. She married him in 1899. found this slave narrative written about George Lycurgus by an Edward Lycurgus. And I kind of went beyond our records to find this. And it mentions in there how his father was captured by the South after his blockade running ship was sunk. He was in jail for a short while, but the South didn't want to upset England, so they let him go. And the man actually walked to St. Augustine. Along the way, he bought himself a wife at auction for $950. That sounds weird to me, but that's what he did. This is a later on census. I read in that same slave narrative that this Ed Lycurgus did not get married. So he didn't marry Hester. So I looked at this census, which shows the Valentines down towards the bottom, right in here. And it shows the Lycurgus family up here. And you'll notice there's twins, Edward and Edwin Lycurgus. So I'm sure the other one went back to Alachua County and married Hester and saved her from the wildlings. Well, this is where, I'm going to leave you with the Valentines. You may be able to find more, you may not. I have some other records. I told one lady earlier that I could show you some things where there were powerful women in Alachua County. This lady's name was Matilda S. Brown. She was the wife of the guy who owned the main store in town. When he passed away, there were a lot of people that owed him money. So what does she do? She sues all of them and gets her money that her husband had been owed and never paid. This was Theophilus Williams, and there's tons of these suits listed in the books. This is just a piece of a page so that you can actually read it and not, the whole page. But she sued many people to get the money back. This one is something that we were told never, ever happened, that the Indians did not deal with the white man's government, especially the white man's court. But if you can see in the middle of this, you've got the name Mikanopi. That was Chief Mikanopi. If any of you know anything about the Seminole Indians, Chief Mikanopi was one of the biggest chiefs that the Seminole Indians had. And he went to white man's court and he actually sold this little girl, it looks like to her parents. It says to John and Susan Payne, a certain Negro girl named Catherine was the daughter of the Susan and John Payne. And you can see down here, William Graham was the captain of the 4th Infantry. You can go see that. I'm not sure how to say this. Osher or something like that was a speaker to Mikanopi. I have seen the name Jumper in connection with Mikanopi, and he was the orator to Mikanopi. This just is something that was in this book that I offered to transcribe that nobody knew was in there. And I transcribed this around the 11th of November, 2002. I didn't get it all finished before I started to work for Clerk. This one is like a prenuptial agreement. How many of you realize that way back they did things like this? This lady was going to marry George W. Rawls. Her name was Mary Kay Hodge. And she had this other gentleman, William Hope, hold in trust some of George W. Rawls' property, just in case something happened to their marriage, that it would then belong to her. And most of us did not think that things like that happen. I think I'm going a little faster than I thought I would here. I'm not sure what time we've got, but I'd like to share with you how you or anyone else can help with our work. We have a volunteer form that's online, that's easy to get to, that you can sign up. And when you do that, I fill out password and everything for you. And you can come to our volunteer page and transcribe stuff or index stuff and make it easier for somebody else to find. And I tell people, you know, if you happen to be looking in our area, you look at things and then it's gone. Whereas if you come and you transcribe something or something like that that you want to look at, then it's there for anybody else to look at easily. They don't have to go through what you went through. Now, back in the made this mouse pointer where I could see it, and then I cannot see it. Let's see what happens if I just click nothing. There we go. There we go. This is our page where you can go to our volunteer page. All the projects are listed here. Some of them have been finished. Commissioner's minutes transcriptions were finished October 3rd, 2012. Our marriage book index project was completed the 28th of October, 2003. Our deed book index project was completed through 1927 on the 31st of July, 2006. I was promised by the powers that be that after 1927, everything would be done and I didn't need to do anything, but that never happened. And it's been that long. But this allows you, it has instructions at the bottom. It has things that lead to a dictionary that shows some of the old terms. It gives you an idea about the old double S that a lot of people don't know about, that looks sort of like SF. You can check on the transcription status of all the books from here. Anytime you choose a book page, it gives you that page and won't let anybody take it unless you leave it without doing anything to it. And in that case, when I run my special script, it will wipe out where you took it and allow somebody else to take it. But if you do anything at all with it, it will stay in your name and you can finish it. You can actually save it on our server and come back and pick it up and go from there. And if you want to see how this works, this is me. And let's pick mortgage transcriptions. And I'll show you some more of the stuff down here of all the books. This is slidable, so you can slide it wherever you need to slide it. You'll sign in. I put it over here to the side so you can grab it. Mortgage book 9, we'll pick 9. Let's select the book. And up here it has the pages that are left. You can see that it's been done down to page 570. We're going to pick something up here that won't be right in line. And you get the form. This is a text box. You can put the image of this book in the bottom in 2 or 3 different ways. One, you can just put an image. And the image is it's like a GIF file or a JPEG, whichever one happened to be at the time. And you can scroll through it. It should scroll. And you type up here. It's just like anything else. Get back to the top. And you would just type in like state of Florida. If you're like me, hunt and peck. It takes a while. And we do things like that to make it sort of look like what's down there. You can go to the bottom here. You can save this transcription if you've done the whole thing to the database. If you haven't done the whole thing, you can click this little box right here. When you click this box, it saves transcription to the database. What it does is saves a partial transcription. Go back to up here where you can just finish, but this did this originally when a lot of people were on AOL and such things, and they would get dropped. And when they got dropped, they would lose everything. So I started it where they could save bits and pieces, and at least they could go back to that. And you can see here that this was page 570, I believe. And you can type in 570 with that 9 and recover the transcription. And the webmaster, which is me, needs to fix that.
Well, it says 589 on the page right there.
Yeah. I didn't try that the other day. There's definitely a bug. We just redid our server. We got a brand new server. It's a lot faster. And they used 3 steps of cold fusion, which is the thing I use between the database and the forms. And the cold fusion went up 3 levels. And there's certain things that are different. And I thought I had everything figured out, but obviously there was something there that I didn't have figured out. But it did save it. I know that, because it said it did. Okay. That is most of what I had. It went a lot faster than I thought it would. Does anybody have questions about this? We just did this. It's not something that we had a committee to decide how to do. It's not something that was thought a lot about, really. We just decided we were going to do it, and we did it. And we did it before the Library of Congress did anything. We did it before the Library of Virginia did anything. We had stuff online before Ancestry had stuff online. And in fact, we were online so early that the legislature of Florida decided they would make a law to make us take some of what we had online down. We had to take anything that was a file. We had most of our probate files online. And they created a law that made us take everything that was not an official record down.
You know, Jim, I would kind of like to see a little bit more going back to that one of your first slides where you were showing like the marriage records and the county commissioner minutes. Can you kind of maybe talk a little bit? I think we kind of glossed over the county commissioner minutes. Can you kind of like explain to the class the value of those?
Well, the value of those, let me see if I got to get out of this and get back into the other, and we can go back and look at those. But the value of those, would be better to just get out and start over, which might be the best. Stuff with this. So the county commission minutes, they have names in there of people who did things like worked on roads. They had a list of jurors. If you were a juror, you had to have owned land, you had to have been there. And it's just a way to find people in a place that you may not have had another way to find them. It also gives history. They did things like the town I live in is Waldo. There was a myth that Waldo used to be called Bellamy Station. And that was because a road called the Bellamy Road came through here, and it didn't really come through here. I can show you where it went by using county commissioner minutes and things like that. But they showed that the road was actually 2 miles south of where Waldo was, or Waldo is located. And other things showed that it was a myth. But if it hadn't have been for these bits and pieces, our history would still be myth in places. And I don't know how to explain that any other way than say that there's so much locked up between these dark pages that nobody really knows about, that now you can go and search that. If you're searching for Bellamy Station, if you're searching for Waldo, you can find the earliest time that Waldo was mentioned in there. And Bellamy Station is not mentioned in there at all, not in the county commissioner's minutes. It is mentioned in the territorial papers, and it's mentioned as a possible place for the railroad to go, Waldo or Bellamy Station. Well, somebody put in there a thing about it going to within so many miles of Bellamy Station, and later removed it, meaning that it never had to go near Bellamy Station. So we had 2 or 3 different ways to prove that, but that was proved by this. There were things in there like they created a pauper's house at one time. Before they did the pauper's house, they just paid people like welfare is what they were doing. It was only like $3 a month. But if you didn't have money and you were bad off, and they could tell it, you'd come down to the commission and ask for this little stipends. And if they thought you worthy, they would give it to you. And you were listed, of course, now in the county commissioner's minutes. There's lists, sometimes it's 200 people long that they gave $3 to, or $6 if you had a family, and that kind of thing. And your name's there, which is, very special to somebody who's looking to see how these people live.
Jim, do you have a particular name? Just, like for instance, out of the pauper's house, do you have like a particular name you could show us, just as an example?
We could try searching. Would be the best bet. Let's see. Let's give on a bug with this. That's all. Apparently we are also. Apparently we want something. Oh. I know why it's because I did not do this. That was 50 things showing. We're going to go to 3,000. And we're going to search for pauper. You can see servers fairly fast. And now we got older stuff in here. Even C. Let's see if we can find something in C. We'll go to the transcription. And it says that Francis Dorsey be placed on the pauper list at a pension of $2 per month. And that was order number 4482 on, let's go back to the top, April 7th, 1896.
Wow.
We had laws like this one, that the road between Thomas McCready and Mrs. M.R. Shuford be straightened by Thomas McQueen, having complied with Chapter 4747, Laws of Florida. And this, looks like something is missing here, or they skipped a line. Be granted a license to own and carry a repeating rifle. Now we think of gun rights today. Now this was back when you sort of really needed a gun at times, and you had to have a license to carry a repeating rifle. Here's another one down here, J.W. Cloud. He's complied with the same chapter. This is 4147, which is probably what it was. Be granted a license to own and carry a repeating rifle. And then you got Thomas Cujo. He placed on the pauper list at a pension of $3 per month. And we're back to Francis Dorsey and Dennis Willis be placed on the pauper list. Little things like the first Monday in July be the date fixed for the sale of taxes for the year of 1895. This is by Karen Kirkman, who did this on the 10th of October, 2011. Karen Kirkman is still doing transcriptions, and she's done over 15,600. Can you put that in your head? 15,600 some odd pages of books that she has transcribed. She says it is an addiction to her, that like when we changed the server and I had to say, you guys can't transcribe for several days here. It's going to take us about a week to get things turned around where we can be sure that things are working. And it really bothered her that she couldn't transcribe. So that's the sort of thing that it really is to the right person. And I always tell people that one transcription is a big help. It takes that page out of the darkness and brings it into the light. But people like her just go on and on and on. And I tell them, look, when this becomes a job, when it's no longer fun, stop. I don't want you out there trying to do something that's not fun for you. I want it to be fun. And the strange thing is, we keep a steady stream of volunteers. Karen's been there for, seems like ever, and done this 15,000 plus. I think I've done 3,000. That just kind of shows you, how many she's done. And she was wanting the other day another book, a special book, one of the early marriage books to be put online so she could do that one. And I told her I thought that with the index, there wasn't much left on that page that you needed to transcribe, because it was who got married, when they got married, who married them, and that sort of thing. And there wasn't much else on that page. I mean, even the witnesses are listed in the index. So I think we needed to do that, but she wanted to do that.
Been good
Anything else?
volunteers.
Yes.
Powell, I have a question.
Yes,
Is
yes.
it possible for you to look up the last name of Davidson in about 1908, late 1908 in these records?
Some things, yes. Marriages for sure. We can
In
go
the county, the pauper list?
the pauper list. That would be a little more difficult. We'd have to figure out which book, but we could do that. And we'd have to figure out which book and look and try to search that book.
So this would be
I
for,
mean, it's possible to do, it's possible to do that. In other words, what you have to do is go down to the, I think this is the right one, the book, and then you look down through here and you see 1909 to 1914. Lost the cursor again. We want to pick this book that will take this time. I think if I click yes over here, it will give me the search for these, but then I'm going to go back and find that same book we were just looking at, 1909. And you're wanting Davidson. Anything's possible. You just have to have the right way to do it. This says all these pages are in F that have Davidson on them. Let's see if they do. You see it, holler. There's Kelly and Davidson, but this is different. This is L.B. Bryan and Charles Pinkerton be paid as reward conviction of Kelly and Davidson $200.
oh yeah, that's, I know what that is, yes.
And then
I'm looking for Emma Davidson as a widow to Joseph Davidson. This is a relative though. This is Emma's brother-in-law, the Davidson who killed a guy.
And then
Small
it says that the treasurer of Putnam County, Florida, be paid the expense of trying Kelly and Davidson $428. So they're on this page for sure. That's who you're probably looking for. And let's see if we can back up.
Well, obviously the trial was out of county.
And there were several reasons for doing that. Sometimes there was not a jury in the county that would not convict. And sometimes there was such a thing as lynchings.
Yep.
So they took them out of the county, put them in another jail and tried them there rather than leave them in the county where, you know, tempers were maybe flaring, that sort of thing. Let's see if this,
Yeah, it'd be hard to find, possibly hard to find an impartial jury.
yeah.
Yep.
So looking for Davidson.
Well, this
There's,
is 1910, so that's probably a little, oh, there's December.
Yeah, this is 10, and there's Davidson. That R.L. Kennedy be paid for feeding Davidson for the month of March. He's been paid $12.40 for feeding Davidson. It doesn't say what Davidson,
Yeah.
but you know there was a Davidson here that was poor that this R.L. Kennedy was feeding, and they were somehow had come to the county commission and gotten permission to be fed, more or less.
Okay.
Did you realize things like that were in county commissioner's minutes?
No, I didn't know. Thank you.
You're welcome. And like I say, all of those on that list were in that 1910 book. And if you go to that book and search that, you can look at each one of those right there from where you're at. And have it right there in front of you as if you were at the courthouse.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim,
That'd be good.
I'm just waiting for
Yeah.
other people to pipe in with questions. Hold on, there's one I think I just saw in the chat box. Hold on. Let's see here. Oh, Bill wanted to say congratulations to you, Jim, on your great efforts on this project. What a public service you have performed. Yes, it can be fun, but I know it's also a great deal of work. So they're saying thank you for, all the tremendous amount of work you've put into this.
I appreciate that. And like I have said, work is fun, and The boss actually paid for this presentation, so have to shout out to Jesse Irby. He is our current clerk. I started with his father, Buddy Irby, back in 1999. And I think Jesse has a better feel for history than his father did. I mean, I think he's more into it. He's really jumped in there with both feet and made sure we had what we needed. He is making sure that that spot that I told you about before between 27 and today is filled in. In fact, I'm not doing quite as much ancient records right now as I would like to be doing because I'm helping official records, that OR that you see up there, check their indexes that they had created and matching them to the actual book pages. They do things a little different than I did, and I've been helping them out. And we're up to from the present back to, I think it's 69 or something now, 1969, which isn't that far. It isn't close to 27, but as we go back, you know, each year there's less, if you know what I mean. You can kind of see that from the deed book list. You know, if you look at the dates over here on the side, you get, you know, more deeds per year the farther along you go. In other words, if you get towards the bottom of this 375, you know, you're only going from September to September.
You know,
That's
Jim,
it.
I've spent countless hours researching my own family history, and I know it's always exciting when you find a document that has your ancestor on it, but sometimes it takes longer to transcribe the document than it did to find the document. And I got to
It
tell you,
can.
I mean, I just cannot say enough thank yous for not only the work you've done, but your volunteers, because, oh my gosh, the amount of time that this saves a researcher not to have to transcribe the record. That is amazing.
Well, that does help, but our real deep-seated reason for transcribing these was to, like I said, shed a light on the darkness, you know, that was between these pages. That book sitting on that shelf and that information is in that book. And no one knows to go pick that book and look in it. I mean, you can have a general idea about which set of books you need to look in or which county you need to look in. But with this, our transcription search, you can search, and if they have revealed it with the light of a transcription, you'll be able to find it immediately.
Could you go back? I wanted to look at, didn't you have, if I recall correctly, didn't you have the wills or the probates?
We do have will books. Let's see, the mouse likes to run off of my screen. You see him running off?
No, no, I see. Oh no, that's I'm seeing my mouse. No, I don't see your
You
mouse.
see your mouse. Maybe I should have you use your mouse. Okay. Will books. We can put will books on. We have from 1840. That's our earliest existing. We're pretty sure there were will books before that. But then again, that ancient records book, and I don't know where that went, but I had a thing on here at one time, probably disappeared. But there were, I know where it is. If you'll hang on a moment, I'll go find it. But before there were actually deed books, everything was written in the ancient records book. Now I've got another mouse in here. There. Okay, we want to go to the ancient records book. These are the deed books, and you can see that we have both wills from here and we have records of foreign wills. What foreign wills are say, someone owned land in Alachua County, but they were a citizen of Reno, Nevada. And they filed a will in Reno, and it has in it about the piece of property in Alachua County. Well, to work that out and actually do something with that piece of property, they had to record that will here. So sometimes you'll find a will here that is burned someplace else or been lost someplace else, because we have that record of foreign wills because there was a piece of property in our county that this person owned. And you can see all the stuff that he did in the county that he came from too in this will, not just the piece that was in Alachua County, but his whole will.
Wow. That's something I had never even thought of looking for, for a will in a different county from where
Yeah,
the,
especially if
Wow.
you have a clue that someone owned property in a different county.
That's called an ancillary probate.
That's one of the more modern terms for it.
Right.
And what they did was call it foreign wills back in the day, if you know what I mean. Even though it wasn't really foreign, it was just not of our county. And I believe an ancillary will, I can't even really say it, is more a portion of a will. And what these are is the entire will. In other words, they didn't write something special about this piece, or there wasn't something special in their will that they sent here. It's their entire will, the whole thing. If they were giving away stuff in Reno, Nevada, that's in there. If all their family was in Reno, Nevada, that's all in there. Everything that they wrote in their will is in there. It's just as if it was filed there, only a copy was filed here because it had this little piece in it.
Correct. And that's today. I do trust in a probate administration. And when you have family members that have lived in other states, i.e. like my grandparents lived in Kansas, and I know there was land back there. Luckily, they got everything in their trust. But if there was some piece of property or a mineral interest or something that was missed when they passed away, then an ancillary trustee would have to file the ancillary probate, which would take their original will, their last will and testament, and file that in that county. So that's another good way to track people.
Yeah, all these were exactly that. They were, filed as our earliest here was number one was 1930 when they started, the farm will book. Go down here to the bottom, and this is our ancient records page with all this stuff on it. And you can see this was the original Alachua County. This is the Georgia border right here. And this is Charlotte County down here, Port Charlotte. And this was the original Alachua County. And you can kind of see right here in the middle, the current Alachua County. That was 1830.
Yeah, I don't see Pinellas County there. It's all Hillsborough. That's interesting.
Yeah. In other words, every year they worked on changing it. This is Dollar Hyde's map guide to the federal census that I borrowed parts of. And you can see in 1840, this was Alachua County. In 1850, this was Alachua County. In 1860, This was Alachua County. In 1920, this little piece of Levy County was taken out, and this was Alachua County. In 1925, we became the county that we are today. Gilchrist County was taken off in 1925. And we still have most of the records, the early records of Gilchrist County until 1925. So it's kind of weird there that you have to, and a lot of these places, you know, are mentioned in our books that were at the time over that part of the state. So it's not just current Alachua County that we have records on. If you go back far enough, we have records on other parts of the state.
What great information. Unbelievable. You know, William Dollarhide's book, I actually have a copy in my own home personal library, as well as in our genealogy collection at the TMCC Library as well. It's probably one of the more popular books we have as far as being checked out is concerned.
It does help a lot. Okay, let's see.
Now, there were a
I'm
couple,
gonna-
if you don't mind, just if I can just tap you for another couple moments, could we see a couple
Sure.
samples? Can we just see a couple samples of those, of the deeds? Maybe, I think specifically the older ones might be of interest.
Let me play with this book for just a second here and see if I can find the stuff that I wanted to show that I completely let lapse. And, we will. This is deep. And this is what it looks like in writing. You know, this is what the clerk was looking at and saying, really? And then he had this, which I wrote. Personally appeared before me Samuel Harvell, one of the acting justices of the peace. And if you go on down in here, it says the said priests aforesaid were obliged to retire in much haste from his residence with his family in order to save their lives from the hostile Indians, and providentially escaped from the savage rage and tyranny, carrying little else but his wearing apparel and bedding. And this deponent further saith that the evening after said priest left his dwelling house, crops, household furniture, and implements of husbandry, he and 11 men, and they've got men marked out, and others came to the plantation and dwelling houses of said priest, and stayed all night, being on a scout or guard against the Seminole Indians. And this deponent further saith that the 6th day of December at night, he with sundry other persons came near said priest plantation aforesaid, and saw the house and the outhouses all on fire, advancing within 200 paces of said dwelling. Several of the men said they saw Indians around the flames, and said consuming outhouses, granary, barns. And this examinant verily believes with the most, and I couldn't get that word at the time, Mike could get it today, but I haven't gone back and checked them all, required the truth that every item in said priest bill of charges against the United States for something takings and depredations were real. And that's all in the deed book. The deed? No, but they didn't have any place else to write it, so they wrote it in the deed book. And then there are some other interesting things in here if I can get to it. But just go previous page here if we can get to it. Worried about this mouse.
Boy, that would really put, you know, the like what we call the, you know, putting the meat on the bones of the ancestors. Wow.
And this particular gentleman, this Gabriel Priest, I was part of the Florida State Genealogy Society. And my wife and I went to one of the big meetings down in Orlando or Tampa somewhere. And this one young lady, she was a teenager, had won a teen award for doing her family history. And she's going along and she's talking about her family and she's talking about Gabriel Priest. And she mentions that she found him in a book in Alachua County online. And she even mentioned my name. And there I was sitting in the audience. I didn't raise my hand and say, hey, that's me. But it was a real feeling of having done something that this young lady was able to flesh out part of her family because something that I had done. It was just one of those feelings that
Well, that must have made you proud, and you deserve
it
that
did.
for sure.
It did.
You know,
Yeah,
Jim, one of the most frustrating things I think I have on ancestry.com, as much as I love ancestry.com because it's really does have such wonderful access to records. But one of the real frustrating thing is when you find a will of an ancestor in ancestry.com, it's indexed under the name of the person who died, but you don't have an index to all the people who are mentioned in the will, which a lot of times is really what you're looking for, you know, not necessarily the person who died, but who was their family. And I can see the real value of what you've done here to be able to search by the name of the person.
right.
that
You can
is
find the
record.
name. Any name in here you can find.
Yeah.
And this is also the deed book. Now this is, let's see if we can find a date on it. It's my date. And I did it. But it's in the name of God, amen. I, Hickerson, king of the territory and county aforesaid, being sick and weak in body, but of sound mind, memory, and understanding, do make it published and declare this instrument to be my last will and testament. Now, this is not a will book. This is a deed book. This is the ancient records book. Who knew this was in there? And he mentions he's giving to his beloved wife 3 likely young cows. He doesn't know they're young. I give to my daughter, the wife of Abram Polson. So you know who his daughter married, 1 cow and a calf. And I give and bequeath to my children, which is now or may be born hereafter, the issue of my present marriage, all the balance of my property, and the increase thereof to wit. And it shouldn't have been there really, but it was. And it's not the only one. I think the next page is also a will. Or this one. Maybe it. This personally appeared before me, William M. Reed, an acting justice of the peace in and for the said county, James Gibbons, who being duly sworn deposes and saith sometime in the fall of 1832, the deponent witnessed a contract mutually entered into between Thomas Cotton Stanley and John Stanley Jr., his brother, that all the property that the said Cotton Stanley owned at that time, in case of his death and the said Stanley should survive, and any and all that he, the said Thomas Stanley, might accumulate before his death, was given and bequeathed to his said brother John Stanley. So in other words, that's another will. It's not in will form. It's somebody else saying this is what he said, but he's not saying he said give it to me. He's saying he said give it to his brother. So they took it and copied it. And if you read this at the bottom, this one says true copy recorded this 23rd day of November, 1835. And it was sworn to and subscribed this 19th day of November, AD 1835. So this was written by somebody in 1835.
Jim, I wanted to share a comment that was in the chat box from Jean. She said, this work really defines transparency. Nice work, Jim.
Well, that was our feeling. We wanted it to be, where everything was out there. There's one thing that I showed you that if I can get back to ancient records and our partial deed index. This isn't a secret, but not everybody knows about it, and it's not something that we publicize a lot. But if you're looking for someone who was enslaved in Alachua County, if you'll put an asterisk in surname here and the word slave and use all name down here and submit it, you should get a name. It'll be first names of slaves. There are 928 names. These are in varying books before the Civil War, of course. But if the name is something that you feel is part of your family, you can go to that page. Say we're talking about looking at a deed, and look at the deed and see if the family name might match, that kind of thing. If it's someplace that mentions more than one, sometimes there are slaves mentioned together as husband and wife and that kind of thing. And it just gives you a way to find things that you couldn't find any other way. And all you got to start off with is a first name.
I can see the value of this for, for African-American family research. Oh, gosh.
Well, that's
Wow.
it's something that is, controversial. So we don't make a big thing, but anybody comes and asks, we say, this is the way to look. And it has helped a lot of people. And if you talk to people like we mentioned, my mind is going blank, Karen Kirkman, she is the head docent for Hale Plantation, which is a home that was a plantation that has been taken care of. And one of its services is it goes through and tries to trace the lives of the slaves that had been enslaved on that plantation. Then she started off, when she started helping, was looking for Hale stuff, trying to find little bits and pieces of the history of the Hales to put within that house and the slave history to put within that house. And she blossomed to doing just about anything from there. But it is a real time saver for her after she's done it, if you know what I mean. She sees that once she's done it, it's there. In other words, sometimes I'll find something and I'll think, I'll remember where that is. And I don't write it down and I don't transcribe it. And it's lost. I can't find it again.
Wow. Like I said, the dedication of not only you, but all the resources that you have access to there locally. Actually, this today's presentation actually kind of reminds me of one of the real values of reaching out before you go. Like, some of our students in our class have actually even just recently gone on genealogy field trips to other states looking for records. But I mean, just not only realizing the value of the online resources that you've created, but just the knowledge of the local resources that you have. I mean, just exemplifies the importance of reaching out to local people in the community of which your ancestors lived before you go there.
Well, a lot of us have email, and email is an easy way to talk to someone at a clerk's office. And if you don't get the right person the first time, a lot of times we'll pass it around amongst ourselves till you do. And when it gets to me, I know pretty much where I should send you if I can't help. One little story that just kind of gives you a feeling of how much fun this has been. I think it was still in 1999, and I was working in the basement. They put me in the basement. There was a phone call, and they told me to pick up the phone. There was some lady who was looking for her great grandmother. And I picked up the phone, and the lady starts off. She's looking for her great grandmother, and she was a Washington, and she had a funny first name, and I can't remember right off the handle right now, but she was looking for her. And I looked through the stuff I had, and there wasn't anything there. And I said, well, is there any way I can get in touch with you if I find something? And she gave me a phone number. And all the time I'm talking to this lady, I'm thinking, I know this voice. I know it. But I couldn't put my finger on it. And that afternoon, my wife and I went across the street to the library, right? And we found a book that had been written by the Bland community that mentioned this person. I wanted to say it was Clander. It was Clander. Her name was Clander Washington. And it mentioned her, and it mentioned her family. And it got down to this person who was in New York, whose name was Karen Johnson. And the Karen was spelled very oddly. I don't think it was spelled the way that she actually spells it, but it was spelled like Careign or something like that. It was real weird. But come to find out, I put all this stuff together and called that number. And when they answered Whoop Incorporated. And it was a Los Angeles number. And I told the guy who answered that I had this stuff that this person had asked for, and could I email it to him? And he said, sure. And he gave me this email address that was boysonside@aol.com. Well, do you know who made a movie named Boys on the Side? His name was Whoopi Goldberg. I'd been talking to Whoopi Goldberg on the phone and never knew it.
That's awesome.
I had the feeling, but I never knew it. But about the time that Gates was doing his African American Lives, they emailed and asked, what did I know? Well, I told them what I knew, and I knew quite a bit. They sent a TV team from the New York PBS station down to interview me and a couple of other folks, and on her family, which her family was one of the first to own a homestead. It was homesteaded property. To homestead property, all you really had to do is pay this very nominal fee and live on the land for 5 years and farm it, and it was yours. And not many Black families got away with that. But in Alachua County, we had quite a few. And hers was one of them. It was the Washington family. It was William Washington. Now I've lost her name, but it's usually right there on the tip of my tongue. William and Elsie Washington. They were Whoopi Goldberg's ancestors who owned land in Alachua County in the 1870s.
Jim, in your bio that you gave me, you also mentioned that you worked on original African American lives as well as the history detectives.
Yeah, that was this when they came down to do this with Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg was in their first African American Lives. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what
We
about
spent all day together, and I think I was in it for 5 seconds.
Oh.
But I took them out and I took them to the site where I think the house was. and showed them all around there. And of course, the house isn't there, but there are trees and sort of the form of a house, if you know what I mean, house and a yard. And they filmed all around there, and they filmed me, and I was really taken, pretty good by the whole situation, because they told me out of all the people they interviewed down here, I was the most natural. So that felt good. I don't know how other people took me in the show, and I wasn't in there very long, but that was pretty good.
What about the history? What about the history detectives one? That's a separate one, right?
That was a separate one. There was a lady who sent in a letter to the history detectives that had been written by one of her ancestors, and it discussed going back to Liberia. It was that time period when they were trying to talk a lot of slaves into going to Liberia, not back to Liberia. None of these people had ever been to Liberia, but they were talking about sending some of them to Liberia, and they were paying and all kinds of things to go to Liberia. And he was talking about it. Well, there was a portion in there, this guy's name was McLeod. The original spelling that he did was MC, capital C, Loud. Now, the researchers for the show looked for that and couldn't find it after a certain date and assumed he went to Liberia. And they asked me about it. And I said, no, he didn't go to Liberia. The clerk or somebody just changed the way they spelled his name. His name was spelled the Scottish way. It was MC, capital Leod. Same guy, same wife, everything. And I sort of showed them that he didn't go to Liberia, and then they found relatives, and they had the relatives meet the relatives in South Carolina, where they had sent a letter from. It was a pretty neat experience.
I'm going to have to look online and see if I can find those 2 episodes and stream them.
Liberia letter is online. Just search History Detectives Liberia letter. And I don't know if you have to put Tukufu Zuberi in there or not, but I'm pretty sure you can find it. African American Lives, if you go to the IMDb, the International Movie Star Database, and search for me, I will come up. I don't know if you can see the story from there, but you can also go, I think, and find the African American Lives, and
Wonderful. Okay, well, we still have quite a few people logged in. Does anyone else have any questions?
When are you moving to Hollywood, Jim?
I'm not going to do that. About 2 years, I'm going to retire, and we're just going to go around and do what we want to do.
You could be
A couple of years ago, we went whitewater rafting, and I jumped off a cliff into the Colorado River. Things like that.
Sounds like a good plan.
Great. Okay.
I never
anyone
thought I
else?
would do something like that. What's that?
I'm just asking the class. Anyone else?
Huh.
I'll give it just a few more seconds to see if anybody unmutes their microphone. Let me look in the chat box real quick here. Hold on. Betty says, fabulous service to the community and to genealogies. Kudos to you and your staff.
Well, we have no staff. I'm in.
Your volunteers.
My volunteers.
So, okay, other than just a lot of thank yous in the chat box, it looks like that's it. So I'll just invite the class before I say goodbye, Jim. I'll invite the class for those who want to stay after. We do spend the last hour of class working on trees. So if there's a genealogy topic you want to talk about, or you want to work on a tree, please feel free to stay. If not, at this point, I'll say thank you to Jim, and I will stop the recording. And Jim, once again, it's been a great experience, and you are a real asset to your community, and you really know how to get those volunteers, we're in there working and giving everyone the information that they really need.
We have had volunteers from as far away as Alaska, the state of Washington. The guy from the state of Washington did a lot of our indexing of our deeds. During that time, he moved to Hawaii. And the only difference was the time of day he came to work.
That's amazing. And
Well,
I hope, and I encourage the people in my class, log into the Alachua County Clerk of Courts website and become a citizen transcriber.
And if you do one, that's awesome. I don't expect anybody to do 15,600. I never expected her to do that. When she first came on, there was one other volunteer that had done like 1,000 something. And she had the audacity to tell me that she was going to catch her.
By 50,
And darned if
15
she
times over.
didn't. The other lady quit. I guess it was just the wind at her back, she was moving.
Well, once
And she's
again,
still
Jim,
doing it today.
well, Jim, thank you so much for your time. You've certainly been very generous with it, and we certainly appreciate it.
You're
And
more
I
than
will
welcome.
I'll be in touch with you again soon with a link to the recording.
And I'm sorry about the mouse. Maybe I could figure that out, but going back and forth like that, that mouse would disappear on me.